Shabbat Shalom. On this, the 22nd of April, we are remembering Yom HaShoah, which is, the day is actually the 18th of this month. Yom HaShoah, the full name of the day commemorating the Holocaust, is actually Yom HaShoah V'higei V'ra. Shoah is Hebrew for catastrophe. The full name means Day of the Catastrophe and Heroism. It's remembered on the 27th of the month of Nisan, a week after the 7th day of Pesach, a week before Yom HaZikaron, the memorial day for Israel's fallen soldiers. It marks the anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, which took place between the 19th of April and the 16th of May in 1943. So, exactly, many years ago. This day was selected by the Knesset in 1953, 10 years after that uprising, and of course 70 years ago. It has become the day that is commemorated by Jewish communities and individuals worldwide, and is specific to the Jewish Shoah, unlike the so-called Holocaust Memorial Day in the UK, which has become many things, but often almost obliterates the actual Shoah. Why do we remember this day? Because the Shoah is unique in the annals of human history. Never in the history of humankind has a plan to annihilate an entire ethnic people been executed by a nation systematically, scientifically, against those not at war with it. People sought out for death, not only within its borders, but beyond its borders. I highly recommend the movie Denial with Rachel Weisz. It's a powerful portrayal of the evidence of the Holocaust, which so many wish to either ignore, obliterate, or simply dismiss. The Shoah was intended by the evil men who devised it to destroy the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, to break the chain of Jewish generations going back to Abraham and Sarah. Family reunions for many Jewish families aren't large because there are so many members missing: cousins, nieces, and nephews, grandchildren and great-grandchildren who will simply never be. Although the Shoah did not succeed in its goal, it did erase as many as 4 generations and many families, from great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, and children. Few Jews have relatives who were alive in Europe during that period. Genealogical projects in places like Yad Vashem in Jerusalem encourage the chain of Jewish continuity, helping to reforge it for the present and for future generations. How does the Shoah speak to us? Distinguished Holocaust scholar and author Yehuda Bauer stood before the German Bundestag in 1998. There he declared that these 3 commandments should be added to the 10 words of Torah, You shall not be a victim. You shall not be an oppressor. You shall not, never be a bystander. Elie Wiesel has commented in a similar vein, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Yet, 80 years nearly after the end of the darkest chapter in human history, which has caused us to pray and to vow never again, anti-Semitism is again on the rise throughout the world, and Israel's integrity is disparaged daily. In the Holocaust's aftermath, the international community responded by adopting conventions and resolutions for the crime of genocide, all in response to the atrocities committed during World War II. Clearly, nations and societies should do more than simply condemn others or stand by while Jews are once again subject to such hatred. You may ask, hasn't the world learned anything? We found that even when the UN passed a resolution declaring January 27th the International Day of Commemoration of the Memorial of the Victims of the Holocaust, what happened to us was sidelined. If the idea was to call for a remembrance of past crimes against the Jewish people with the purpose of preventing them in the future, why are Jews so often outside the mandate for remembrance? And what about Holocaust education? In this country, Holocaust education is less and less part of any curriculum, and many teams have never heard of it. In Europe, it's mostly untaught and often unknown by the young, while their parents choose to forget it. In the USA, despite a large and active Jewish community, there are only 5 of the 50 states that have mandatory Holocaust education. In other countries around the world, nations like Japan, China, and India, the history of the Holocaust is neither taught nor discussed. The attitude of so many is that it really has nothing to do with them. Why are there no serious academic programs that educate students about the Holocaust? Studies made on Holocaust education have found that the most meaningful and effective way to educate youth is one-to-one conversations with survivors. But we have fewer and fewer of them around to do this in person. In fact, first-hand testimonies are both profound and transformative, which is why the Jewish Museum in London has recorded the stories of many survivors. When young people hear from a survivor, they quickly understand the importance of not being a bystander. We must learn from the heroism and courage of those like Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish diplomat in German-occupied Hungary, who saved the lives of nearly 100,000 Hungarian Jews. The most recent Shoah revelations have stunned even the scholars who thought they knew everything there was to know about Germany's program of genocide against our people. It has taken more than 70 years to uncover all the facts. Perhaps we don't even have them now. Now we know that this most unspeakable of crimes, the genocide of the Jewish people, was more than a triumph of evil. It was the sin of the so-called innocent civilians. The scope of the Shoah is now being revised as we see new revelations. It isn't just the huge killing centers whose names we speak with horror: Auschwitz, Bergen-Belsen, Buchenwald, Dachau, Majdanek, Belzec, Ravensbrück, Sobibor, Treblinka. Researchers at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum have released documentary evidence that astounds even the most informed. We now know that there were more than 42,500 Nazi ghettos and camps throughout Europe, and were also in the making in North Africa between 1933 and 1945. A total of 30,000 slave labor camps existed, along with 1,150 Jewish ghettos and 980 concentration camps. The evidence has been found of 1,000 prisoner of war camps, 500 brothels filled with sex slaves, thousands of other camps used for euthanizing the elderly and infirm, performing forced abortions, Germanizing prisoners, or transporting victims to killing centers. Using current information, we now know that between 15 and 20 million people died or were imprisoned in sites controlled by Germany. These figures force us to face the absolutely crucial truth about the Shoah. There were no innocent bystanders. After the war, the trials and accusations focused on a few perpetrators who were seen as mad, obsessive, cruel, even unbalanced. But when we examine the true extent of the horror, it is necessary to recognize that the so-called cultured, urbane citizens of Germany and the countries in which the Shoah was perpetrated must share in the shame of a world which acquiesced, yes, accepted the triumph of evil. Typically, we have heard from citizens of these countries, and I have personally heard from Germans myself. We had no idea what was happening, but the truth is that almost everyone had to have known. These people rationalized their silence. As Elie Wiesel wrote, the opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. Although humankind may hope that we will learn from history, history shows us that we will not. When man abandons the instructions and commandments of God to follow his evil inclination, he is left to the mandate and authority of Hasatan, and his future is damnation. A survivor of Auschwitz-Birkenau penned these words in 2015. I know now that anti-Semitism is an eternal given. It rushes in waves along with the crises in the world, the words, the monsters, and the means of every era. Anti-Semitism will never disappear. It is too deeply rooted in the world. More than that, this survivor said of her experience in watching the Twin Towers disintegrate in 2001, that everything became clear, as the illusions I still had fell from me like dead skin. I don't know if that horror reawakened the other horror, but from that day on, I felt how much it meant to me to be a Jew. It was as if up until that day I'd been avoiding the fact that being Jewish is the strongest thing about me. We remember Felix L. Sparks, Brigadier General, retired, Australia, led the liberation of Dachau. This is part of his eyewitness account. During the early period of our entry into the camp, a number of men, all battle-hardened veterans, became extremely distraught. Some cried while others raged. Some 30 minutes passed before I could restore order and discipline. During that time, the over 30,000 camp prisoners still alive began to grasp the significance of the events taking place. They streamed from their crowded barracks by the hundreds and were soon pressing at the confining barbed wire fence. They began to shout in unison, which soon became a chilling roar. After about 10 minutes of screaming and shouting, the prisoners quieted down. We informed them we could not release them immediately, but that food and medical assistance would arrive soon. The dead, numbering about 9,000, were later buried with the forced assistance of the good citizens of the city of Dachau. Private Harry Herder, USA, gave his account of the liberation of Buchenwald. Slowly, as we formed up, a ragged group of human beings started to creep out of and from between the buildings in front of us. As we watched these men, the number and the different types of buildings came to my attention. From them came these human beings, timidly, slowly, deliberately showing their hands, all in a sort of uniform of bits and pieces of a uniform, made from horribly coarse cloth with stripes running vertically, the stripes alternating a dull gray with a dark blue. Some of these human beings wore pants made of the material. Some had shirts or jackets. Some had hats. Some only had one piece of the uniform. Others had two. Many had all three. They came out of the buildings and they just stood there, making me feel foolish with all of that firepower hanging on me. I certainly wouldn't be needing it with these folks. It was then that the smell of the place started to get to me. Our noses, rebelling against the surroundings they were constantly subjected to, were not functioning anywhere near normally. But now there was a new odor, thick and hanging. It assaulted the senses. We still had no idea what this place was. Sergeant Blowers told us that some of the prisoners spoke English. Then he got even quieter, looked at the ground for a moment, raised his eyes, and looking over our heads, he began very softly, so softly we could hardly hear him. He told us that this is what was called a concentration camp, that we were about to see things we were in no way prepared for. He told us to look as long as our stomachs lasted, and then to get out of there for a walk in the woods. I had never known Sergeant Blowers to be like this. The man had seen everything I could imagine. This place was having this effect on him. I didn't understand. I didn't know what a concentration camp was or could be, but I was about to learn. The bodies of human beings were stacked like cordwood, all of them dead, all of them stripped. The stack was about 5 feet high, maybe a little more. I could see over the top. They extended down the hill, only a slight hill, for 50 to 75 feet. Human bodies, neatly stacked, naked, ready for disposal. The arms and legs were neatly arranged, but an occasional limb dangled oddly. The bodies we could see were all face up. There was an aisle, then another stack, another aisle, and more stacks. The Lord only knows how many there were. They appeared to be skin covering bones and nothing more. I have since seen the movie made about Buchenwald. The stack of bodies is vividly displayed in the movie, just as I saw it that first day. But it's not the same. In no way is it the same. The black and white film did not depict the dirty gray-green color of these bodies, and what it could not possibly capture was the smell. General Dwight D. Eisenhower knew that one day people would deny that the Holocaust ever took place. Yes, he believed that would happen. So he sent camera crews into the camps to record what few living today have seen. He arranged to tour Ohrdruf and Buchenwald with General Omar Bradley and General George Patton. He ordered American soldiers in the area who were not on the front lines to visit Ohrdruf and Buchenwald so that they could see and be witnesses. He ordered citizens of the town of Gotha to personally tour the camp. Having done so, the mayor and his wife hanged themselves. Eisenhower wrote to his wife, Mamie, "I never dreamed that such cruelty, bestiality, and savagery could really exist in this world." He cabled General Marshall suggesting that he see these camps for himself and bring congressmen and journalists with him. He ordered that all civilian news media and military combat camera units be required to visit the camps and record their observations in print, pictures, and film. His worst fears, of course, have come true. With growing hatred of Israel and Jews, more and more people today deny that the Holocaust ever happened, rejecting written and photographic evidence. When leaders express doubt about the numbers killed in the Shoah or question the statistics recorded concerning the Shoah, remember that General Eisenhower took steps to stop their lies. Don't be afraid to speak the truth about what really happened, and don't let anyone get away with saying in your hearing that the Holocaust is a myth or an exaggeration. The following prayer was written by liturgist Rabbi J. Harlow. Adonai, Master, Creator, who set the round course of the world, Creator who caused veins, brains, and bones to grow, who fashioned us, air that we might breathe and sing. Remember that we are incomplete and inconsolable, our vision clouded by ashes. Remember the chimneys, the ingenious habitations of death, where part of Israel's body drifted as smoke through the air. Remember the mutilated music of their lives. We lament in fields of loneliness for 6 million of our number torn away. Remember them. There are some who have no memorial. They are perished as though they had never been. Forget them not. Remember the landscape of screams engraved at entrance gates to death. Remember the unborn dreams. Remember the terror of children whose tears were burned. Remember the agony of parents whose blessings were consumed. Remember the prayers of the dying, the shame and suffering of the innocent. Remember. We have not forgotten you, though all this has befallen us. Remember the God-forsaken millions in a silent world. Their loneliness was matched only by yours. Who is like you, Adonai, among the silent, remaining silent through the suffering of your children? Are you not God, Adonai, that we may hope in you? Renew the light of your creation, which has been dimmed. Renew in your creatures your image, which has been desecrated. Restore the covenant which your people have maintained. Remember the hopes of the slain by sending redemption to your shattered world. In spite of everything which strangles hope, help us to continue the sustaining song of their lives. As we remember those who died, some with faith, some without, individuals with names and families, homes, jobs, aspirations, and hope forever destroyed, these words from Tehillim 83 come to mind. O God, do not keep silent. Be not quiet, O God. Be not still. See how your enemies are astir, how your foes rear their heads. With cunning they conspire against your people. They plot against those you cherish. Come, they say, let us destroy them as a nation, that the name of Israel be remembered no more. Cover their faces with shame, so that men will seek your name, O Lord. May they ever be ashamed and dismayed. May they perish in disgrace. Let them know that you, whose name is the Lord, that you alone are the Most High over all the earth. Let us meditate on these words from Yeshayahu 54, which are God's promises to us, the people of Israel, for our future. Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. O afflicted city, lashed by storms and not comforted, I will build you with stones of turquoise, your foundations with sapphires. I will make your battlements of rubies, your gates of sparkling jewels, and all your walls of precious stones. All your sons, your children, will be taught by the Lord, and great will be your children's peace. In righteousness you will be established. Tyranny will be far from you. You will have nothing to fear. Terror will be far removed. It will not come near you. If anyone does attack you, it will not be my doing. Whoever attacks you will surrender to you. See, it is I who created the blacksmith, who fans the coals into flame and forges a weapon fit for its work. And it is I who have created the destroyer to work havoc. No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord, and this is the vindication from me. One of my dearest memories in taking 2 groups to visit Auschwitz-Birkenau was on the second trip to that horrible hell place. There, walking through the area of the camp, were Israeli children with the flag of Israel held high. The enemy sought to destroy us. But thanks be to God that we have survived. We remember the Shoah, but we also cry, Am Yisrael Chai, the people of Israel live. Shabbat Shalom.